let me introduce you to our lineup here. We have Michelle and Robert King, who are the executive producers, the creators, the writers, everything, who have a great team who've given us shows like The Good Fight and The Good Wife in the past. We also have Katja Herbers as Dr. Kristen Bouchard. We have Mike Colter as David Acosta. We have Aasif Mandvi as Ben. And my Gold Derby colleague, Rob Licuria, is here to help me take on this whole evil gang. All right, this is a show that was nominated recently, by the way, for 5 Critics' Choice Awards. That's huge. And this is a show that is fairly new. It's going to debut at season 3 on June 12th on Paramount Plus. And this is a network that's known for having cult hits. And that's the kind of show that the Kings give us. You guys tend to have fanatical shows, but we're used to seeing legal shows. And my first question is to the Kings, and whichever one of you wants to answer it, fine, but how dare you create a show called Evil that's so funny? I mean, it really is funny.
Michelle?
I think it would be more daring to give you a show called Evil without humor. That would be the real bad choice. But Robert?
You know what, Michelle and I are of different belief backgrounds. We've been married forever, and we thought it was interesting to do a show. You know, the Good Wife universe was all about marriage and having a family when there was scandal, blah, blah, blah. And The Good Fight was more about living in the Trump years and the aftermath. This seemed to be more of disagreements between us on our understandings of why people do bad things. And I probably come from more of a Catholic background. And so I'm much more the Mike Colter character, which you can see by just looking at me. We're next to Mike. And then Michelle.
Is he the more evil one of the two of you, Michelle?
I think I might be.
No.
Yeah. Michelle,
I reckon you probably are.
Michelle is Katja.
Oh, I should know.
Okay.
Yes.
Around.
Anyways, the skeptical one.
And then Aasif is our daughter, Sophia, who is the pragmatist.
And if you met their daughter, Sophia, you would see.
I mean, yeah.
So it just seemed like a fun thing to do, is to explore these disagreements between us, but in action. And, you know, you're always looking for different ways to kind of get the audience to engage. And sometimes engaging in genre is the way to do it.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, and this is for the whole panel, like, tonally, I find it very hard to explain what Evil is, because when I first started watching it, I remember when it premiered back, I think I was in Hawaii, and we were in a hotel room, and I'm like, this is like it's going to be really scary, and it's an air show about evil. But after a few episodes, it becomes something else. Like, it's funny 1 second. It's really, in season 2 is really raunchy. It's sometimes completely bizarre and bonkers, which is what I'm expecting from the Kings. How are you towing that line so carefully to make sure that the tone doesn't veer off to one side or another side too much?
I kind of think we throw that to the actors, because I think Katja has a real demented comic streak, as you can see from her feature work too. And Mike is the opposite.
I think she has a bit of a drinking problem too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mike is the opposite of the priest in the show. So it's probably a good place to start with them.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead,
Katja,
guys.
put you
Tell
on the
us.
spot. Katja.
Got you.
Mikey. No, I love that the way that you're describing the show is the first thing you said about it, Robert, was heartwarming. I love that. I'm going to keep that, and that you focus on the funny, because I sometimes get a little almost like defensive or frustrated when we solely say horror, which is kind of how it's, what also scares some people off and obviously gets a lot of fans going. But I think it's so much more than that, because the Kings are such incredibly funny people, so yeah, I just feel very lucky to work with such rich material.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I think to what Robert was saying, I think he probably couldn't have cast someone more opposite from David than me. I mean, I almost was like, well, he must not know me very well. I guess he just doesn't know anything about me. This is great. I'm like, maybe I can just, I can sign on to this, and maybe he won't figure it out before we start rolling, because I don't know how this is going to happen. But I give them great credit for trusting us to try to bring these characters to life. And to his point, I think it helps that since we are not necessarily like our characters, or at least I'm definitely not like mine, I'm looking to try to find those places that I can relate on my own level, and to bring some of my personal feelings and point of view, how I would perceive the situation through the lens of David, but at least to understand if it says, go left, maybe I want to go right, just because it's more interesting. And as long as it serves the purpose and the story, it's really useful for me. Every once in a while, I try to reserve the right to text or call the Kings about anything, but sometimes, the writing's great, and I'll just ask them for one line adjustment, or maybe one thing to take away, because I like it, but then I want to sort of accentuate it. And I think sometimes maybe the one line would help to go away, or one line would be helpful to have. And so I'll ask for that. And then, that usually, and then sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'll ask for something and I literally get on the set and I go, Jesus, I shouldn't even texted them. Why did I? Now I got to make this work. I should have shut up, but now I've asked for this. Now I got to make it work. So I really think about it twice before I reach out.
Well, can I also say, Mike and Katja, you both, and Aasif too, often your questions are more, can we remove lines? Because you feel like you're getting so much either through the chemistry or from, which is why it is a good episode to see, because silent episode, how much you have to express without the lines. I just thought it was kind of amazing, both comically, which I think is the real exciting thing about this episode, that you did without much content at all.
Let me add to that, actually, and then let's get Aasif in here as the actor, because that really obviously is the great challenge. It's like a throwback to the silent film days. You have to act without words. First of all, is the temptation to do what the silent film stars did, which was to overact. And the second part of that question is, in the silent film days, you had subtitles. The audience was allowed to at least read the movie. Here, you couldn't even do that. Here, you were faced with a double challenge. So how did you face that, Aasif?
I think that the three of us also have been working together now for a while, and there's a kind of interesting chemistry that has developed between the three of us. And I think that translated into this particular episode in the way we communicated with each other, in terms of not getting too large or histrionic about our, and actually just using a lot of eye contact and sort of the way we would if we really, like it just was really grounded. It just felt really like we were grounded in the characters that we had created. And so I'm glad that this wasn't the first episode of Evil that we did. It was like, in the middle of season 2, and we had already developed a certain amount of rapport between us. And it really did help us a lot in this episode, and just being able to communicate with each other. And we really understood our characters as characters at that point as well. So.
And Tom, just to clarify, we did have some subtitles at one point. I believe we had fuckity fuck fuck fuck.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh yeah, we did.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Very,
The opposite
very
to
nuanced
Aasif.
writing. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Katja.
No, I just thought for Chris and for me, I just thought go big or go home, overact all the way. As long as it's all grounded in some truth. I mean, she got drunk pretty quickly.
Oh.
I love it. It just gave me a lot of freedom to do anything and to bring out as much joy that I think was sort of needed for her. And for me as well, it was a big release to after what you've seen Kristen go through, be so light. And to bring out that part of the character, because I think she is truly a goofy, fun person, and there's just a lot weighing on her. So it was nice to bring all that out. I think, there were I was definitely not keeping it small. That was kind of truthful, I hope.
Yeah.
The premise of this episode is brilliant. You know, that just the opening scenes is you're going, the sign, you're stepping into a monastery where no word has been spoken for 130 years, and you must not. The whole thing was just, in terms of the creepiness factor, was so cool, and then it had all those other classic evil touches to it that. When we first heard about us teaming up with you guys to do this interview, everybody kept going, because I saw like the first 3 episodes of the season, and then I saw the finale, and I kind of jumped around a little bit, and I hadn't seen this one, and they said, "Oh my God, you haven't seen." But this one is special, isn't it? Why is it so special? Is it the one that everybody calls out from the season?
Well, it's one of the few that can stand alone. For one thing, you don't need to know what has happened before or after. This is one of the few that's a sort of like a standalone story.
I think there's also something very attractive about the absence of noise, because our lives and your TV viewing, your streaming viewing is so noisy that when someone, you might be doing 12, but you'll multitask as you stream. You multitask and let the show take care of itself, and you'll know because you'll hear the sound change for a new location. Then you go look at it and you go, okay, now I'm going to go back and type or whatever as you absorb. But so when someone truly is silent in your streaming, it does draw your attention to it, because you have to focus on what they're doing, not just TV as radio, because I think that is one of the worst things about streaming, is the only content is often the dialogue. And so it allows you to do other things as you watch streaming. So I think that's the attractive quality, is that it kind of forces attention in a way that Buster Keaton did. This book Cameraman is great about what Buster Keaton was and what it meant filmically. And I thought it was just fun challenge to have the actors try the same thing.
Yeah. Well, with no words, did the Writers Guild allow you to pay yourselves? With a script with no words?
Direction.
The audacity, just the audacity of it. So I was also thinking, going back to the tone, this episode's a great example of how the evil really threads that needle very carefully, because you have one scene where Kristen's getting drunk with the nun, and it's just bonkers. And then you have another scene where there is a cabinet, an evil demonic cabinet that's oozing this goo, and it's super creepy. And I wondered, how was it very difficult, Rob and Michelle, to hone this script down to what we ended up seeing? Did you have to chisel it back from something even more crazy and scary or funny? Like, talk us through the evolution of the script.
The script came fairly easily for us. The hard thing was the editing. And the editing, because it was long. It was very long. And it's surprising when you're in the editing room how much you use the Band-Aid of dialogue to get around things you cut. Because you can ADR lines or help explain why a plot thread was dropped. It was a much bigger plot thread with Mike thinking somebody else wrote that note, that I need you on his pad. And, whittling that down, it was very difficult. We realized these sketch pads, these kids' sketch pads gave you a relief, because you could visual effect another line than you had on there originally. Like Asa's WTF came later, we put it on then, because we needed to accelerate the scene. So I would say the editing was much harder than the writing, which was just kind of, we have an amazing writer's room that helped with us build a solid structure and a solid, this is exciting, let's do this. What are the shocks for Ben? What should Ben go through? And then it all came down to, editing and some of those killing your darlings as you go.
Yeah, but in terms of tone, I don't think we fight to put in the various tones. That's just sort of a given of, we want it to be scary and it's just going to be funny because that's our knee jerk. But while that isn't a problem for putting it in the script, I think the ones that really face the difficulty are the ones that have to boil that down and figure out what the poster is. Because like in the trailer, you can show all those different tones, but if you're just trying to show a poster of what is evil, you really are struggling, because what tone do you highlight?
So
I think
true.
that's also kind of the genius of the show, if I can interrupt for a second here, because this is a good example of that, where sometimes you decide to conclude an episode where we as the viewers must concede the supernatural exists and evil exists. And then like this show, this is a good example, and there are many others from the season, where all of a sudden, no, it's all easily explained by science. And not knowing where you're going to go in the end by that, not knowing if I should take the ride on the supernatural side or not, is really fun. And you're not afraid to make us wonder or take the ride or come to this conclusion or that. It's amazing.
Well, Aasif, you're usually the one explaining things that way. Do you find you wish there were things that were more supernatural in the show, or?
Well, I think, you know, a lot of times we don't explain things away, actually. You know, there's many occasions where Ben will explain one aspect of something, but there's a whole other thing that sort of just doesn't ever get explained, and we move on. And those threads, I think, move through the whole season and sort of, you know, almost like a snowball. Like there are all these things that, if you look back at the whole first 2 seasons, you'll see there are many things that are not explained, much to the frustration of Ben. And so, you know, I think that what Ben explains whatever he can, but there are a lot of things that don't get explained, and I think that's what makes it fun, because you can sort of explain A, but you can't explain B, and so then does A even make sense if you can't explain? You know, and that's where I think the audience gets sucked into the sort of complexity of it, the sort of Rubik's Cube element of the show.
Yeah, David desperately wanted, for episode 7, he desperately wanted it to be, you know, sainthood. He wanted it to be what he thought it was. I mean, I remember that episode started the prior episode, and we get, you know, Peter Scolari, our dear Peter, gives us this marching orders, and we go in and we're like, okay, and we go to this place, and I'm hoping it'll be what they think it is. And I still don't know, unless I've forgotten, with the cabinet that was oozing. I don't think we have an explanation for that. So I don't know.
The cabinet was never explained.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That cabinet, I think there's more to it. Yes.
Oh, and then the goo later.
Goo, that's what I mean.
Like in episode 8.
It goes through the floorboards.
That's what I mean.
Oh, yes.
Later, I have like animal sex with my husband. I'm wearing a rat mask, I'm wearing a lion, and we're having sex, and now this goo is dripping.
Look at them laughing. Look at them laughing. This is all just
I know.
It's just a huge joke. Like,
and the skeleton picking his teeth. I mean, it was just, it's like, what is this? Coming up with this stuff? It's great.
And the big bespectacled horned devil thing that Leland has like, what on earth am I watching? I love it.
Let's go into him and ask a few questions. Yeah. Is he just crazy? Is he just a devil? Or is he really Satan? Or what is he? I know it's kind of hard. I kind of
think, you know, Michelle and I talk a lot about that the psychological responses that people have in the show are often made into metaphors within the show and become real. Now, the question would be, is that the way they see it? You know, what is that lovely book that I obsess on? Oh my God. The psychopaths, the schizophrenia. Collected Schizophrenia is this wonderful book of a woman who, you know, has a real life, has everything, but she also can see hallucinations. So I think a lot of these people in this show, like Sister Andrea Martin plays, or Michael Emerson, you know, they seem to see their psychological state. If you don't believe in the supernatural, or if you do believe in the supernatural, what they're seeing are true demons. I think Michelle and I have disagreements on that, and I think that is what we want to explore in the show.
And I would say that, you know, as you point out, there aren't always answers at the end of any episode in terms of, is this actual or is this psychological or supernatural? And for me, what's more important than the answer is the fact that the characters respect each other's point of view. and listen to each other. For me, that's the more interesting part of it.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a fascinating character. I remember Tom asking me once, who do you root for on the show? And I'm like, you're supposed to root for, the team. We love our trio, but sometimes I'm kind of rooting for Leland because he's so manipulative.
Oh, no.
No wonder Michael
You know
Emerson
that means trouble.
I know, right? Well, of course. But no wonder he has 1,000 Emmys.
And the other great debate Rob and I have had about this show is, as a viewer, whose eyes do you see this story through? Yeah. And my answer is different than Rob's. My answer is Katja.
Yeah.
And what's your answer, Rob?
Well, I think Ben. I mean, and then I'm sure my wife probably thinks it's David. So I don't know. That's very intentional. Has to be. Talk us through that. We're always shifting.
I think that tells you more about yourself than it does about us. Who you see, who you see the show through. It's just But that's I think. Honestly, that debate is. Can I just say, that's props to the Kings, because that's in the writing. I think when an audience is constantly switching and going wait, I agree, but I disagree, but wait a minute, I agree with that, but I don't agree with it. And who am I? That's what keeps an audience engaged and interested in a show, I think.
I kind of think, Mike's character, David, in this silent episode, I really relate to him trying to silence his mind. Because I think even if you're just in a meditation and not in a prayer, the difficulty to shut the hell up. And then the comedy there, and it was fun to work with Mike that way, but the comedy of seeing what's flitting through his mind as he's trying to be silent, that I find really relatable. And you...
And I would have, as a series, I would say the point of view is actually the team, that the team really is, in fact, melded enough that they create one point of view.
Yeah, but Katja has this element of mischief about her. I mean, she's thinking of something and then crazy, and she's just gonna go do it.
Thanks, Tom.
Talk us through those choices, Katja. Yeah, because you are really the way you play Kristen. She's bonkers, and she has a really crazy story
in a delightful way, though.
In a really delightful way. And before you do, by the way, the season 2 finale, we start to get into some really this is not a comedy. This show, it's just got comedy elements, but it's actually can be quite serious. And is she going to get away with murder? I mean, really, that's the question for season 3.
If she's going to get away with murder.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she kind of has by the end of season 3.
Season 2, you mean?
Season 2. I'm sorry.
I think you're kind of, because you got away with it for the worst reasons, which is white privilege, right? The cops think that you look like a soccer mom, and therefore a soccer mom, if she did have a reason to kill a serial killer, then he probably deserved it. And yet, if you were Black, it would have gone a different way. I think suggesting.
And I think from that first relief of, not having to go to jail immediately and not be a mother to my children came the second bout of awfulness and guilt, which was I did get away with something that somebody else wouldn't have gotten away with maybe. And then by confessing to David by the end of it and really laying my worst side of myself bare, and for him to accept me in that moment, which sort of transitioned to passion. That when I read that scene, the finale, I thought that was just so beautifully written, and the material's so rich. We're so lucky.
How far in advance do you get a script? Ryan Murphy often doesn't give a script the night before to his actors.
Oh my God.
Or on the set or sometimes.
Shows.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
I'll around Hollywood run into his actors and they're shooting an American Horror Story or something, and I'll say, "Well, do you have to be on the set tomorrow?" And they'll go, "Oh yeah." And they'll say, "Well, what are you shooting?" And we go, "We don't know. He hasn't."
Oh my gosh!
Well, you can't film certain scenes like that. We wouldn't have been able to do that confession scene had I not.
Yeah.
The closet.
There are people who work that way, but I do think it shows either the material lends itself to be done that way, or it's just shows in the work. I don't think you can get around it. I mean, it's not so, we're not soap operas. You know, soap operas, you get the pages and they change the pages and you just say the words and stuff. I'm not knocking any of that. I'm just saying that that's not, I don't think that's something that's fair to the actors. And I've been on American Horror Story, but I don't remember that being the case. And maybe it's changed now. I don't remember that being the case though.
I think you get it 7 days before. That's
Yeah,
we get it. Yeah, a couple.
And one other thing, you know, talking about the perspectives of the three characters, I just want to say that, you know, when we talk about politics and religion, I think we've always been sort of polarized by topics. And I think our characters don't allow the audience to pick one side and stay there. And that's what's great about it. You have to sort of continue to listen. And it's just, you know, as a society, we're so comfortable, and I'm guilty of it myself, you know, you pick a side, and no matter what your side says, you stick with them because, oh, well, that's my side and I can't get caught looking over to the other side. And I read articles about this, and, you know, it's just taboo now to allow yourself to open up to the other side and listen to anything, even if it's irrelevant and it makes sense. And so that closing off of communication is what's really destroying society. So with our characters, you can't really do that. So it subtly allows us always to have a conversation and always be listening at all times. And I think that's what's beautiful about the show.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's what you were saying this morning, Robert, about the whole.
Yeah, we really were. It obliterates the confirmation bias that we all innately have. And I was saying it to Tom, you know, the Kings are pretty left wing, you know, from what I've seen in the past, you know, and it really makes me feel very comfortable in my little bubble. This show doesn't do that at all. And it just allows you to be scientific, religious, and so forth. But I'm really worried about Ben, Aasif. Like, oh, seriously, like, we got to do some really, really cool stuff in season 2. That elevator game episode, like, I insisted that Tom watch that. Hopefully he'll get a chance to, because that is, for me, one of my favorites. And you get to do some really crazy stuff. He has night terrors with this sexy demon lady thing. What goes through your mind when you get this material? I mean, it's like you've hit the jackpot. This is really rich stuff for you to do.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it really, you know, as an actor, when you get to sink your teeth into stuff like that, it's just really fun and rewarding. And Ben spends so much time in his head that it's great when I, as an actor, get to explore other aspects of Ben, which are not cerebral, you know, which are physical. And, you know, that was what was so great about the Essence for Silence episode as well, like just doing the physical acting and the physical humor, and even working with the night terrors. And in the elevator episode, just finding out what Ben is like when he's pushed up against real terror like that, you know. It was one of the few times that Ben really gets, he really thinks he's going to die, and he comes right up against that. And so it was really fun as an actor to sink my teeth into that and to get to do that kind of stuff. And I think that, you know, Ben has a rich backstory as well, where he's got all this guilt, I think, in his past about things that he has done, and you know, and has led him to this line of work with David and Kristen, you know, because he also comes from a Muslim family and has rejected that faith and has chosen this other life. So it's you know, there's a lot of stuff there that's interesting to me about him.
Yeah, it's all right.
Any of you guys involved with the show have doubts or real questions, or have you made up your mind about the existence of the supernatural? I mean, not as if someday, of course, we'll have this or that phenomenon explained by science, but in the magic of the dark side of life. Do any of you have any real questions about, it can't just be a coincidence that I walked under that street light last night that just went dark when I got the news that my father died, or something like that. You know what I mean?
I do believe in something like that. I don't know how to explain it. I don't necessarily attach it to religion, but I do, coming from the South and spending some time in New Orleans and being a part of the South where people, I've heard about rituals, and I've heard about, you know, things that people do that are not something you can explain, and nor do I challenge it, because it's something that, you know, it's one thing to say you don't believe, but it's another thing to make yourself, I guess, susceptible to them, using you as a guinea pig. And so I don't challenge things like this. I remember my father passed away. This is weird. Or when I got the news that he had fallen ill, I remember getting up that morning and the fish in my fish tank had jumped out of the fish tank, and it was laying on the floor, laying on the ground. And I don't know what that, it was like an omen, but I was distraught and I was almost paralyzed with I didn't know what to do with myself. But I remember walking and he was laying on the carpet and I could not, it was just the weirdest thing. And I don't remember, but it felt like something that it happened for a reason. And maybe just a coincidence, but sometimes things like that happen and you just don't know what it is. And you feel like it's something that's connected, but you can't be sure. So I don't know sometimes,
I definitely do believe that. I mean, again, not like Mike, I don't subscribe to it from a traditional religious point of view, but like the idea that there is more to this existence than what we can touch and taste and smell. And, I'm very unlike Ben in that way. Like, I think there are things, whether it's explained by religion or quantum physics, I don't know, but there is more to what we see and recognize.
Katja, what's your answer?
I don't know.
That's probably the best answer.
Yeah.
None of us know.
But I mean, Katja you went into the woods. Remember? I mean, you remember the woods in the I mean, that's kind of, it's something.
You went to the woods?
Well,
I
used to have a lot of headaches growing up, like a lot of migraines, and then nothing could fix it. I went to like MRI scans and nobody knew what it was. And there was this friend of mine who said, well, maybe you just got to go to this woman in the woods. And she told me I was carrying around 37 ghosts. And then she took these ghosts away. And I've never had another headache again.
See?
But Kristen Bouchard would say that is a release of sorts because I could let something go, So I don't know. There's always a way to maybe psychologically.
We're talking to Katja Herbers right now, just FYI. We're talking.
Yeah, I'm just checking.
They've merged. Okay, they've merged.
He's confused, guys. Say Katja when you want Katja to answer. Kristen, you want Kristen.
Okay, I don't know.
What's the difference? I hear you.
Robert, we got to wrap up here soon. What? Give us a real zinger for a last question here, Robert.
Oh, that's so much pressure, man. Come on. No, but seriously, season 3 is around the corner. We've got Ben is going through some serious crises. David is becoming a priest, but he's being tempted by Leland, by Kristen in different ways. And then we've got Kristen, who is unraveling really quite badly and, having animal sex and wearing masks and all kinds of crazy stuff. But by the end, maybe she's starting to see the light. So I want to know, first of all, tell me everything about season 3. And then, where are your, are you all going to be okay? I'm worried. Talk us through season 3.
Okay, so I think season 2 was really about forgiveness, not just the eventual Katja confession where she really needed to be forgiven, but Aasif throughout Ben has something in his past he really needed to be forgiven for. We see it a little bit in the scene he has with his mom. This 3rd season is really about temptation and the difficulty of how, and it's not all about religion that way, but it's how the metaphors of religion really apply themselves to other parts of our life. When you want to be dedicated to something, but the temptation of leaving that dedication because of that temptation. You saw a little of it with Katja, but even when she sleeps with that stranger, there's a real sense of getting back at God and getting back at, because he was a Satan worshiper, or even not a very good Satan worshiper too. It was a very cynical version. So
and a bad lay.
Yeah, the bad lay is a good definition for it. So this year, I think this season, what it really is about is, can you conquer temptation and how do you do it? That may sound dry, but it's, again, comedy is our guiding spirit. It's not being dreary. I think there's a lot of drama. Which would you say? Anything?
And the only other thing to say about season 3 is June 12th.
The start date. Okay. But it's on Paramount Plus, so you can go back and see the episodes and binge, and that's, of course, a delight. you know, what it's the journey you've had too, because with CBS,
Yes,
and now Paramount Plus and all of that, you're kind of evolving as a show, as media is evolving, and you're finding your place. And what I find it so interesting about ending up now on Paramount Plus, as I was saying this before you guys arrived here, is that it's a network built for cult shows. I mean, the shows on that network have fanatical followings, and I think it's brilliant marketing by the bosses and great for you guys. And we're all just so impressed. Congratulations.
thank you. It's a lot of fun to work there. We kind of are left alone, which is, I think, a good and a bad thing. Probably a good thing because the show gets very strange.
How alone are we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, E is for excellence, S is for silence, and we commend you for a terrific show that really resonates with the critics. My gosh, five Critics' Choice nominations is fantastic when you're up against what there are 800 scripted dramas in Hollywood every year. 800.
And you watch every single one of them, don't you? You watch
Yes, we have
to. Yeah.
Tom is actually 14 years old, but because of the amount of stuff that we have to watch.
Well, we salute you all. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Care.
Thanks,
Good luck
guys.
for seeing you.
Thanks.